From Red Oak to Greenville, Bluefield to Orange, and Gold Vein to Silver Beach, the Virginia Press Room features the voices of Virginia's press corps from every corner of Virginia. The podcast is a joint production of the Virginia Public Access Project and VPM News. Get the top headlines of the week and the inside scoop on Virginia politics when our top reporters open their notebooks and tell us the story behind the story. New episodes every Monday morning.
This is New Rural Virginia, reclaiming rural leadership through conversation featuring real voices, real issues from the heart of the Commonwealth. All right, y'all. Welcome back to New Rural Virginia podcast, post-election 2025. I am Parson Brown.
And I am Larry Wohlers. We're your podcast hosts, and it has been a pretty exciting week, Parson.
Yeah, well, if you're a Democrat.
That's right. An absolutely blowout victory. We did really well. But let me ask you something, Parson. Are you a glass half full or a glass half empty kind of guy?
Larry, I am my cup runneth over right now.
This week, huh?
Yeah, this week for sure. I'm so happy to see across not just the Commonwealth, but across the nation, the people have spoken. But I'm also, like many of the candidates that we've spoken to on this podcast, I'm trying to be pragmatic and a realist.
That's right.
So I guess I'm in a good mood. Recognize that there is still so much work to be done.
That's right. And I say that with that I raise that question with purpose because we have been focused on rural Virginia for some time now, and certainly with our podcast with candidates. And I think looking at these election results, there are reasons for both sides, right? The Republicans and the Democrats, to be less excited by the results. Right. For Republicans, even though they pretty much kept their lock on rural districts in Virginia, except for Lily Franklin.
Yeah, let's just take a moment to congratulate Lily Franklin.
Absolutely.
She led an amazing campaign, and congratulations to her.
She has been so impressive, and we're looking forward to seeing what she does in Richmond.
Yeah.
But for the Republicans, outside of her, they pretty much kept their lock on rural districts. But the reality, they are looking at a new state assembly in Richmond that's going to be very, very Democratic. And so the Republicans will be sort of on the outside looking in.
Yeah, no, that's true. And as much as it pains me to say this, because I've been thoroughly inspired by the candidates that we've spoken to and by others, we weren't able to talk to every single rural candidate. And we tried our best. But, you know, the results, I think socially, we felt that energy, but the numbers, the results were not so great, despite a fantastic Democrat at the top of the ticket, Abigail Spanberger.
That's right.
And I'll just say it, not a so great Republican running against her. Many rural voters are not happy with the economy, and they're done with the crazy policies. They're not enthused by the Trump administration.
That's right. They did move the needle.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
But frankly, we were surprised that needle didn't get moved a little bit more because all summer we were talking to these candidates and they were amazing. They had incredible records of public service. They really hard workers, energy. They're focused on people's everyday needs. We were so impressed. And so, we didn't have an illusion it was going to be easy, but we did have some high hopes for them. Just a couple quick, interesting data points here. First, Spanberger and the Democratic candidates improved their total everywhere in all but 4 counties compared to 2024. They improved the Democratic turnout. That's really amazing.
It really is.
However, the Democrats really improved their percentage in the counties where they've usually done pretty well anyway. The Urban Crescent, plus 12 points in Fairfax, a whopping plus 22 in Manassas Park. And they did definitely better in some of the rural towns, flipping to blue places like Lynchburg, which has always tended to vote conservative. What's really interesting is that the Democrats improved their vote share the least in the counties where Trump was the strongest, where he had grabbed 70 to 80% of the vote last year. In those counties, Democrats did better, but it was in the maybe 4, 5, 6% range in terms of improvement. And which are those counties? The ones that you and I have really been focusing on, those really rural counties. So it does seem like those rural voters are still just a bit skeptical of the Democratic label.
Well, yeah, I think it validates, it maintains the importance of the conversations that we've been trying to have, that folks, that rural politics are a bit different, and that rural Virginia, there's a mentality perhaps in places where even though we might have folks voting against their own interests, are sticking
That's right.
to their team.
I went back, I compared for our candidates, each one of them compared to their predecessor in 2023. And in every case, they did better, both in terms of percentage of vote and in terms of absolute numbers. So that's impressive, especially given the fact that a lot of them didn't have a whole lot of campaign resources. All but one of those we interviewed was a first-time candidate. That's impressive, and that's a glass half full.
I've just been incredibly impressed by all these individuals. We've talked about with all of them, and like Tim Kaine said, Senator Kaine, when he was on the program, that when you look at the public service that someone has done prior to them running for office, that really gives you an idea of who they are as a person. And I think that's right. But by and large, who we've had the opportunity to speak to, that's the caliber of candidates that we've had in rural Virginia. I think that overall that's fantastic.
So these are the really interesting questions as we look now to the future. The election is over, but a lot of questions remain as we think about what the next year is going to be. We have the great joy and sorrow in Virginia of having an election every single year. And so
joy, sorrow, obligation, responsibility.
That's right.
And honor.
And exhaustion.
And exhaustion, yes.
But as we look at these results and say, well, what does this tell us about going, not just as Virginians or Democrats, but as rural Virginians?
Yes.
What do we need to be thinking about? What is it that is going to resonate with those rural voters as we look down the line? And what will it take for that strong, moderate, really energetic Democratic candidate to really win in a rural area? That's what we want to be thinking about, right, over the next few months.
It's so important to keep these conversations going. And that's why we are incredibly excited to have with us the chair of the Democratic Party of Virginia Rural Caucus, Roberta Thacker Oliver.
That's right. Roberta, someone who has spent a lot of years really focusing on the Democratic Party in rural Virginia, and I'm sure she'll have a lot to share with us today.
Yes. So, Roberta, thanks so much for joining us. You must be exhausted. We are so grateful you could spend some time with us.
Thank you, Parson. I'm not tired. I took a day off and did nothing and feel like I'm good to go again. So you take a breath and you start over. Here we are.
That's why I love you.
So I think a lot of good things happened in this election. We brought people along. People were excited. We saw little increases all the way across the Commonwealth. From the smallest rural community to the largest urban community, there was movement for Democrats, and that's super important. So
our biggest question right now is Democratic candidates we interviewed were, for the most part, very much pragmatic, lots of self-proclaimed centrists. Some said they used to be Republicans and that the party left them aside. Do you think that message of being at the center, did that not get through to voters? And are voters not interested in the center, perhaps?
Well, I think there's voters who are not interested in the center, but for voters that are on the other side that are moving towards us, that's where they're going to land first.
Right.
They're looking for common sense, calm, forward-thinking things that are going to help their community. We have a lot of huge national and international issues out there that we all need to be working on and holding our elected officials to the fire for. But we also know that the things that matter to people are the things that matter to their family, the things that keep them up at night, the things they talk about at the dinner table. Those are the things that people wanted to hear about. The candidates did a very good job about talking about those things, lowering the cost of health care, trying to pay your electric bill, trying to put food on the table.
Right.
take care of your family's health needs and make sure your kids go to a decent school and they get a good education. That's what people want every single day. And it doesn't
Right.
matter what their income is. That's always going to be the things they talk about at the dinner table.
Mm-hmm.
And we touched on those things. And, the top of the ticket did an amazing job of doing that. And the delegate candidates did an amazing job talking about the things in their communities that mattered to them. And they pulled a few people along. So I
Yep,
think
that's
that was
right.
the right place to start.
Mm-hmm. So Roberta, the Democratic candidates did move the needle this year, even in deeply rural districts. What do you think made the difference? Why were they able to attract more voters? Is it a challenge of just how do you reach people? We're in an era of social media, or are there still genuine differences of political choices, or is it something else?
I think that social media is a good way for us to reach people, especially in rural spaces, obviously. There's always been that big conversation about, oh, people don't Facebook, or people only do Instagram, or people only do this or that or the other. And in rural spaces, a lot of people, the only thing that they have that they are most comfortable with is Facebook. So we have to spend a lot of time using that social media in the correct way. That's the thing. When you get to Signal, you get on your Facebook. That's what happens in a lot of rural communities. They don't even have Signal at home. So as soon as they get out in the world, they can get on Facebook, do a multitude of things. They can check on their families. They can see how their neighbors are. They can find out what the community news is. And if we put the message out correctly, they see that. And that's something that we have to be very careful when we do that, is that we have to be able to give a positive message every day, even when we're really angry.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I've brought up a few times in our conversations on the podcast is, that it's really not so much even about crossing the aisle necessarily, that it's about emancipating ourselves from echo chambers, breaking the algorithm. That's the one thing about social media, is it kind of puts us in those echo chambers and in these bubbles.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's anything, what do we do about that?
I think part of that has to do with how we use our social media, because I have a multitude of friends and peers in this work and people that I know from all across the country, and they'll talk about theirs and they'll say, oh, it's so full of all this junk and I get all this BS and this and that. My Facebook doesn't do that. And I think my Facebook doesn't do that because I don't do that. So I'm not thrown into that argumentative, carrying on, acting wild algorithm.
Right. But see, that's so interesting. That's really an interesting component that I hope that,
Right.
And I'm not blaming you for the algorithms, Roberta, because I'm just saying that's something that it's fascinating and can be so uplifting and also very scary and inhibiting.
Right. And I get plenty of information from people that I don't agree with, but I don't get, if I am just mindlessly scrolling at lunchtime, I don't get a lot of BS in my feed because I don't put a lot of BS out there.
That's interesting.
So what was your impression of the choices, the reasons behind how voters were deciding who they were going to vote for? What was your sense of what was making the difference? Was it policy issues? Was it just a sense of I'm a part of that Republican group and not a part of the Democrat, or vice versa? What were the key inputs there?
I think that a lot of people, it was very easy for them to say, I can't listen to this chaos all the time. This chaos that's coming out of the federal government, this chaos that is continuous. I just can't do that anymore. I have to find something else. And what they found in Virginia was a top of the ticket that was very calm and moving forward and talked about the things that people were concerned about, the rising cost of health care, being able to keep a roof over their home, over their head, all the things that matter to people on the everyday. And they saw two very extreme candidates at the top of the ticket. And that moves down to the rest of the ticket. And when you saw, even there are delegate races that we saw that were very much the same way, a very calm, forward-thinking, moving, concerned about the issues that mattered to people every day, versus a candidate who was very much a part of, or wanting to be a part of, the chaos that the federal administration is, even on a state level.
Would it be fair to say that our state elections have been more nationalized in the sense that voters are still choosing state representatives based on their perception of a national party rather than looking, as we've been saying, like who's a good neighbor on down the ballot?
Of the candidate?
of the
No,
yeah
I
of the
think
camp.
that they were saying, I can't do that anymore. That doesn't help my community. I need to know what's going on in the Commonwealth. I need to know
Okay.
what's going on in the state. I need to know how the people who are going to take care of us are going to do that work.
Okay.
And they
Mhm.
found two very polar opposites, and they chose the calming thing. Okay, think of it that you're even at a family event, okay, and you have a whole bunch of family there. It's Thanksgiving, and everybody's excited, and the football game's on, and everybody's ate too much, and it's really, really loud. And then you walk outside for a minute because you just need that calmness.
Oh
People
my God.
came to us because they needed that calmness in their lives.
That is the best analogy I think I've
Right.
ever heard.
But
Mhm.
it's a thing, right? We have to
Yeah,
step
no,
away and find, and maybe you're
100%. Yes.
right.
Right.
And maybe your cousin is also coming outside because they need that. And then you all have a nice
Yep.
chat. And that's what it is. People felt like when they heard from Abigail and when they listened to the top of the ticket, they got to have a nice chat
Right.
over that chaos.
It's that cousin you can take a breather with.
That's what people need. We need that in our lives. We need calmness.
Right. And for the voters who are not, the far right MAGA types, but your neighbors that you know, but who were nevertheless voting for the Republican, any sense of what was driving their choice?
That's a very good question.
I mean, the secret sauce, I
Right.
believe, is
Mm-hmm.
what we're
That's the
looking
answer
for.
to that. People just, again, goes back to being heard and listening to what people have to say and all that rhetoric that they've had to hear. It's just beating you down.
Mhm.
For me as a Democrat, it beats me down because it's like, oh God, I have to go deal with that tomorrow because it's whatever they're
Mhm.
saying. But
Mhm.
as someone who that was the party that they grew up with, and that's the party that they've always been a part of, and now it's this, and that's not the party that they are a part of.
Yeah.
And then they had to figure out their footing in that. Do they still have their loyalty to their party? Have they lost that? There's a lot that people really had to deal with. And I
Right.
think that what we did here in Virginia this year is the first step to them finding out where they could land.
Yeah. There's a lot of personal soul finding, soul searching in both parties that are sort of not what my mom and dad grew up with. And I grew up at a bipartisan kitchen table like
Right.
Joy Powers. I think that's fair for both parties.
We know, and I am as loyal a Democrat as anyone you'll ever meet in your life.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that sometimes my party is not the brightest bulb in the box about their messaging.
Got to go outside and talk to the cousin. Take
They
a
need
breather.
to, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, because we get excited. When we get excited because of anger or true excitement or something good or something horrific,
Right.
sometimes we,
Right.
as a party, jump in and say, blah, 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 blah. And then tomorrow we were like, oh, we should have left that third sentence out. But we were upset and we were angry and we were excited and we were all the things at one time. And I think we have to learn to take that calmness, take a step and figure it out. And as long as we continue to do that, we're going to keep pulling people on because I'm pretty sure that the other guys are not there for that. Okay. Their chaos
Right.
just keeps building. People are literally tired of it.
Mm-hmm.
We have a federal prison here in my county, and I've watched, I can't tell you how many people today say, I don't understand how long I have to try and figure out a way for my significant other to go to work when we haven't had an income in 37 days. They don't understand why SNAP is being held back, even though that doesn't apply to them, but because they haven't had paychecks in 37 days. SNAP could help them right now,
Well, exactly.
but it's
Yeah,
not
that's-
available to them. They're feeling really lost in that. And they're trying to figure out why their party has left them in this predicament.
Right. And to prove a point, at whose expense? All of our
Right.
government workers' expense.
Right.
Well, one of the things that struck me in this, as we said, the Democratic candidates we were talking to were pretty much all pragmatic centrists.
Mm-hmm.
And on the Republican side, there were also some who were on the moderate side, but there were some who were not, right? And who were advocating some policies like pretty total abortion bans or school choice plans that would have drained taxpayer funding away from our rural schools. And these things were not things that I think the majority of rural voters would support. And yet they were able to win anyway. And so it's an interesting question there, right? Is that because people are voting the party without really looking at the issues And is it possible that as they see what the Spanberg administration does, where reproductive rights will be protected and school choice will not be a thing, is that going to change people's minds?
I'm not really sure of the answer.
Right.
I think that the biggest part of decisions that we see in a lot of rural communities is they're disconnected. They're disengaged. They don't know what's going on. So when they get to that place where someone's talking about the election, it could be at the break room table at their job. It could be on Sunday morning from the pulpit. They're only hearing one side of the story.
Yeah.
And then there's other people that like, well, my grandfather was a Republican and my dad was a Republican and my uncle was a Republican. So I think that's what I'm supposed to do.
That's
right.
what I've been hearing a lot of, not just from our candidates and their conversations, but in my own district. That's something that, there's a tradition there that folks feel like they might be, failing their ancestors almost by choosing a different party, even though the times have changed.
And it's hard to have that conversation with people because they don't realize, because they are disengaged, that the Republican Party of their grandfather is not the Republican Party of them.
Yeah,
that's right. And as we've said, this isn't just true of rural voters. It used to be that if you were in a union, you voted Democrat because that's what union members did. And that was a thing until it wasn't. So that's an interesting question is for rural voters, for rural counties. Is that something that's going to be changing?
Well, let's talk about Lily's race in that aspect.
Yeah. Okay.
The thing is, Lily played the ground game.
Yes.
And that's why she got where she got, because there was no door. It was the wrong door. And she spoke to everyone. And she had an army of young people in the Roanoke YDs and the Young Dems, in the rural Young Dems, all of them, every branch of the Young Dems, who are my favorite humans, came out and pounded doors relentlessly until they didn't have a door to knock anymore. And then they came back again with a new list and they knocked the door. And those conversations are the reason that Lily won. And until in rural spaces and rural doors are the worst doors ever, only because they're 10 miles apart from each other.
That's right.
And when you give somebody a list, you could put 20 names on it and it's going to take them all day. And then they don't want to do it because they're like, oh my gosh, look at this. And that's the thing. We have to decide that there is no space too far away from each other. There is nowhere too far off the beaten path. And there is nowhere that does not matter. And until we go to all of those places and talk to those people and have those conversations and sit on their front porch and sip tea and let them tell you why you needed to be there and what they don't vote for and why they don't vote, and have those conversations and build that respect, it is never going to change.
It's hard work.
It is, but the good news is when you knock on a rural door, people usually open the door.
They do. They're so excited you came and visited. And it's a really beautiful thing once you get to those doors. But the thought of getting to those doors makes people not want to do it.
Yes. But you lead me into another question, which is, most of the candidates we interviewed were running for the first time, right? And that's partly because the folks who ran the last time were worn out. They said it really sucks running as a Democrat in a rural district, and they didn't want to do it again. And so we had great candidates, but first-time candidates, they had to build a team, they had to figure things out. And you don't want to just reinvent the wheel each time, right? And make sure they have the money they need and the resources. Do you think we're a better place this time around for that?
I think that, let's talk about when we had the rural retreat. Because there's a part of that was a super important reason that we didn't just put the people that were running for delegate on the stage on Friday night and introduce them to everyone. I really wanted them to be introduced to each other. And I wanted them to be introduced to each other because I wanted them to leave all knowing that they were not the only one. And they weren't the Lone Ranger out there by themselves trying to figure it out. And there was a whole bunch of them that were trying to figure it out together. And they became friends. And they relied on each other and they became a team. And for many of them, those relationships are going to last forever because they just clicked and got it. But they also learned from each other. And they also could go to each other and say, oh my goodness, let me tell you what happened to me today. And they had somewhere that they could do that.
So do you think we have a strong enough sense and that the voters in rural Virginia have a strong enough sense of the idea that there was such a thing as a rural Democrat that is not in opposition to the larger Democratic Party, but something special, something that people can look to and say, I'm a Democrat, but I'm a rural Democrat, and I'm a part of this world and have a particular vision on things.
I think so. I could speak from personal experience from that. I live in a very, very rural. Lee County is a very rural county.
Right.
I always tell people, when you get to the end of the earth, you make a left, go 3 miles down. That's my house. And today, when I was at the store today, I got 2 hugs, a high five, and a wink. And I only knew one of
Aw.
those people. And it was all
Wow.
about Tuesday.
Okay.
And that's because people in my community know who I am, because I am a vocal, positive
Yeah.
Democrat in my community.
Mm-hmm.
And people that do not believe anything that I believe politically, respect the fact that I do it and the way that we do it. And to me, that speaks volumes. And that's how people are going to keep seeing that. And it's all about what we do next. So I think that's a big part of the work that has to be done, is you just have to be out there and just live your life, do what you got to do. That's the thing, people see that, and then they know who you are by what you do.
Right.
We've talked a lot about that with some of our candidates too. Donna Littlepage saying that she'd much rather be in the back room on the sidelines to work, but she came out of her comfort zone, and she's not alone. And so thanks to all those people that stepped up.
Absolutely. Right.
Yes, well, you've done a great job there at Rural Caucus, and Rural Ground Game has done a great job as well.
Mhm.
It's important to have groups and organizations really dedicated to thinking about rural Virginia in that way. Do you think there's more we could be doing, that the state party could be doing?
I think the state party has done monumental work this year. I think they have been very in tune with what's happening in rural spaces in Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
I think they have been very good about reaching out and having conversations and asking for opinion and wanting rural Democrats to have a seat at that table in a much bigger way than we've ever had before, that I am
Yes.
aware of.
Yes.
And I've been doing this for a while,
Right.
a very long
Mhm.
while. And I see that difference. There were pockets of that before, but I think that our chair of the Democratic Party of Virginia has really, really embraced what's new, what we can try, hearing from people's thoughts, and how we can move those things forward. And that is monumental in this work.
Mm-hmm.
And for Abigail, Abby went out of her way to make sure that she had all the parts of rural Virginia that she could, when they didn't make sense to be there then, to us who have been
Right.
doing this forever.
But she showed up. And that's another thing that we've said over and over to all these candidates, including Abigail Spanberger. Just showing up is so important and such a huge part of the work and the fight. And so we're very proud of her, and also everyone who has run for state delegate. And we don't want to lose them. We don't want them to be one and done either. There's so many wonderful, smart, engaged people that we don't want to lose. I feel like they deserve a week of naps.
Absolutely. I have spoken to many of them since the election. I haven't had opportunity to talk to all of them yet,
Sure.
but I have talked to several of them. And they're all like, all right, when do I start again? And I'm like, yesterday?
Good.
You started over yesterday. And they're like, okay, I got this. And we're going to, the Rural Caucus is going to work with that. We're going to do what we can to make people see how that work looks moving forward.
That's right.
But,
Mhm.
especially going into the midterms next year, we have to, if we can keep moving in the direction that we've moved this year, next year, we're going to
Yep.
do some serious work.
Mhm. Mhm.
And one of the things we need to do is lift up those delegate candidates to make sure that they are involved in every one of those congressional races in some way, to bring
Yep.
their insight and for them to learn from those who have been done in a long, long time, new things too. And everyone has to work together to move that forward.
Or maybe step up
Mhm.
and run.
That is true. That is always true. But there's a lot of good things that can happen moving forward just from the little bit of movement that we've gotten this year. And we
That's
have to
right.
keep doing that.
Yes.
So we really want to thank you for being with us today.
Oh, I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
And thank you for everything you've done over the last year.
Yeah, Roberta, thank you. There's some folks that did not even realize that we have a rural caucus. Not only is there a rural caucus, but it is thriving, and we have strong leadership in you.
Well, we appreciate it, and we're gonna get through reorg. There's more work to be done. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I look forward to doing it with you, gentlemen. So, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate your podcast. I listen to it every week. Share it out when I can. Tell everybody to get on it and keep moving, because I think y'all are doing amazing work, and it's real important.
Well, that's a good way to end this.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you. New Rural Virginia Podcast, conversations about rural Virginia's future, is a product of New Rural Virginia. Visit newruralva.org for more. Please like, share, subscribe, and follow us. We're available anywhere you get your audio. For deeper dives into the topics we cover, catch additional insights and stories on the Rural Angles Substack newsletter. This program is produced by Larry Wohlers and yours truly, Parson Brown. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned for the next episode.